Hey, I never thought much about love. Not the kind they show in movies anyway, with grand gestures and perfect timing. At 24, my life in Ashwood, Oregon was simple enough to keep me grounded. The town sat quietly along the Willamette River, a place where the leaves turned gold every fall, and the air carried the faint scent of wood smoke from someone's chimney. Main Street had one stoplight, a hardware store, and the Rusty Spoon, the only diner open past 8. That was my world, and I was fine with it. I'm Liam Harper. I fix pipes by day and sling plates by night at the diner. My hands are always stained with grease or dish soap, and my boots have seen more mud than pavement. After Dad died in a crash 3 years back, it was just me and Ava, my 17-year-old sister, holding down the old wooden house on Cedar Lane. 2 bedrooms, creaky floors, a porch that sagged on one side. Ava was finishing high school, buried in textbooks and college applications. I was the one paying the bills, patching leaks for neighbors, and making sure the fridge stayed stocked. Love, that was a luxury I didn't have time for. It was a Thursday in late October, the kind of evening where the chill sneaks under your jacket and the sky turns a bruised purple before 6. I'd spent the morning crawling under Mrs. Delaney's sink, wrestling a rusted pipe that fought me every inch. By the time I clocked in at the Rusty Spoon, I was starving and running on fumes. The diner smelled like fried onions and burnt coffee, the neon sign flickering like it was on its last breath. I tied on my apron, grabbed a tray, and started wiping down tables. That's when I saw her. She walked in just as the dinner rush was dying down around 6:45. A little girl clung to her hand, maybe 5 years old, wearing a yellow raincoat 2 sizes too big and clutching a stuffed bear with one eye missing. The woman Claire, though I didn't know her name yet, looked tired in a way that went beyond a long day. Her dark hair was pulled back in a messy bun, strands escaping around her face. She wore a faded denim jacket over a black sweater jeans that had seen better days and sneakers with a hole near the toe. Her eyes, through hazel, sharp but soft, scanned the room like she was calculating every exit. They slid into a booth near the window. The little girl Nina climbed up on her knees to peer at the menu. Claire leaned over, pointing at something, her voice low. I was refilling ketchup bottles at the counter close enough to hear. "Just the kids' mac and cheese, please," Claire said when I approached. Her voice was steady but tight, like she was holding something back. "And water." Nina's eyes lit up at the mention of mac and cheese, but then they drifted to my tray. I'd just grabbed my own dinner grilled cheese, extra crispy, the kind of thing you eat when you're too tired to care. Nina stared at it like it was a treasure. Claire noticed. Her face tightened. She reached for her purse, a worn canvas bag slung over her shoulder, and started counting coins. I saw a couple of singles, some quarters, and a crumpled 5. She frowned, recounting, then looked at Nina, who was still gazing at my plate. "Mommy, can I have some of that?" Nina whispered, pointing. Claire's cheeks flushed. "No, sweetie, we're getting your favorite." She turned to me, forcing a smile that didn't reach her eyes, just the mac and cheese. I nodded and started to walk away, but something stopped me. Maybe it was Nina's wide eyes or the way Claire's hands shook just a little as she closed her purse. I don't know. I'm not the type to play hero, but I'd been hungry before. I knew what it felt like to count pennies and come up short. "Hey," I said, turning back. I slid my plate across the table. I ordered too much. "Mind if the kid helps me out?" Claire's head snapped up. "No, we're fine. We don't need—" "It's just grilled cheese," I cut in, keeping my voice light. "I'm stuffed anyway." Nina didn't wait for permission. She grabbed a triangle of the sandwich, took a bite, and grinned like she'd won a prize. Claire opened her mouth to protest, then stopped. Her eyes met mine, and for a second I saw something raw, embarrassment, maybe gratitude, maybe both. She looked away fast. "I'm sorry," she muttered, standing. "We should go. It's on me," I said quickly. "Really, no big deal." She hesitated, then sat back down, her shoulders stiff. Nina kept eating, oblivious. I brought over the mac and cheese anyway, setting it in front of Nina with a glass of water for Claire. Claire didn't touch hers. She just watched her daughter, her fingers twisting the strap of her purse. I went back to the counter, pretending to busy myself with napkins, but I kept glancing over. Claire said something to Nina, who nodded and took a sip of water. When they finished, Claire left a few coins on the table, less than the meal cost, and stood. Nina waved at me, her mouth smeared with cheese. As they passed, Claire paused. Thank you, she said so quietly I almost missed it. Her eyes flicked up to mine just for a moment, and I swear the diner went silent. Not the clatter of plates or the hum of the fridge, just her gaze steady and unguarded. Then they were gone. The bell above the door jingled, and the cold rushed in. I cleared their table, pocketing the coins she left. The grilled cheese was half-eaten, the mac and cheese scraped clean. I don't know why I kept thinking about it. Maybe it was Nina's grin or the way Claire's voice cracked when she said thank you. Or maybe it was the way she walked out head high like she was carrying the weight of the world but refused to let it show. That night I got home around 11. Ava was asleep, her textbook open on the couch. I grabbed a beer from the fridge and sat on the porch, the air sharp enough to sting my lungs. The street was quiet, just the rustle of leaves and the distant bark of a dog. I replayed the evening in my head. I didn't even know Claire's last name. Monroe I'd learned later from the schedule board at work. She was new, started a month ago, always took the late shifts. I didn't know much about her, but I knew one thing: I couldn't shake the image of Nina looking back as they left her little hand in Claire's, or the way Claire's eyes lingered on mine like she was seeing something she hadn't expected. I told myself it was nothing. Just a kind gesture, a slow night at the diner. But when I finally went to bed, the house felt quieter than usual. And for the first time in a long time, I wondered what it might be like to have someone to come home to. I didn't know it then, but that night was the start of something. Not love at first sight, nothing that dramatic. Just a moment, a glance, a half-eaten grilled cheese. But it was enough to make me look twice the next time Claire walked through the door. And she would. Sooner than I thought. A week later, I was at the Ashwood laundromat, the only place in town open past 9 on a Sunday. The air smelled like cheap detergent and hot metal, the dryers rumbling like they were about to give up. I'd thrown my work shirts in one machine and was leaning against the wall scrolling through my phone when the door creaked open. Claire walked in, Nina trailing behind with a plastic bag of stuffed animals. I straightened up, surprised. Claire had a laundry basket balanced on her hip, stuffed with tiny clothes and a couple of faded towels. Nina spotted me first. "Fix it, man," she squealed, waving her bear. Claire's eyes flicked to me, then away, a faint flush on her cheeks. "Hey," I said, nodding. "Small world." Claire gave a tight smile and headed for the machines in the corner. Nina plopped down on the plastic chairs, arranging her animals in a row. I went back to my phone, but I couldn't focus. Claire was sorting clothes, her movements quick, like she was trying to finish before anyone noticed her. She wore a gray hoodie, sleeves pushed up, and jeans with a rip at the knee. Her hair was down for once, curling at the ends. One of the washers started making a grinding noise. Claire frowned, kicked it lightly, then sighed. I set my phone down and walked over. "Need a hand?" I asked. She glanced up, wary. "It's fine. Happens all the time." I crouched beside the machine, popped the lid, and spotted the problem: a loose belt. "Got a screwdriver in my truck. Be right back." "Liam, you don't have to." But I was already out the door. My truck was parked across the lot, toolbox in the back. I grabbed what I needed and was back in 2 minutes. Claire stood with her arms crossed, watching as I tightened the belt and tested the machine. It hummed to life, steady and quiet. "There," I said, wiping my hands on my jeans. "Should hold for a while." Claire's lips parted like she was searching for words. "Thank you," she said finally. "I owe you." "Nah, just don't tell my boss I'm fixing stuff for free." I grinned, hoping to ease the tension. Nina ran over, holding out a strawberry candy. "For you," she said, solemn. I took it, unwrapped it, and popped it in my mouth. "Best payment I've had all week," I told her. She beamed and scampered back to her animals. Claire's eyes softened just for a second. "You're good with her. She's easy to like." I hesitated, then added, "You both are." Claire looked away, busying herself with the laundry. I went back to my machine, but the air felt different now. Charged, maybe. I caught her glancing at me once quickly before focusing on folding a tiny pair of Nina's pajamas. We didn't talk much after that. When her load finished, she packed up, thanked me again, and left. Nina waved from the doorway, her bear tucked under her arm. I watched them go, the candy's sweetness lingering on my tongue. The next time I saw them was at Riverside Park, a Saturday morning in early November. I was jogging earbuds and trying to shake off a headache from a late shift. The path wound along the river, all damp grass and bare trees. I slowed when I spotted Nina on the swings, her yellow raincoat bright against the gray sky. Claire sat on a bench sipping from a thermos, her breath visible in the cold. Nina saw me and yelled, "Liam!" She pumped her legs swinging higher. I jogged over, pulling out my earbuds. "Morning," I said, catching my breath. Claire looked up surprised but not displeased. "You're everywhere," she said, a hint of a smile. Small town. I shrugged. "Mind if I join?" She gestured to the bench. I sat, leaving a polite gap. Nina called for me to push her, so I stood and gave her a gentle shove. She giggled, kicking her legs. "She talks about you," Claire said quietly. "The fix-it man who gave her candy." I laughed. "Hope that's a good thing." "It is." Claire's voice was soft, almost lost in the wind. She watched Nina, her expression unreadable. She doesn't have a lot of people. I wanted to ask about Nina's dad, about Claire's life, but I didn't. Instead, I pushed the swing and let the silence sit. After a while, Claire stood. "We should go. Grocery run." She called Nina, who hopped off the swing and ran to her mom. As they walked away, Nina turned and waved. I waved back, my hand lingering in the air. A few days later, I was at the 7-Eleven grabbing a six-pack after a long day. The sky had opened up, rain pounding the pavement. I was under the awning, shaking water off my jacket, when Claire and Nina dashed in soaked. Claire's hair was plastered to her face, Nina's raincoat doing little to keep her dry. "Rough night," I said, holding the door. Claire laughed, a short, surprised sound. "You could say that." She was holding a carton of milk and a loaf of bread, her purse dripping. Nina sneezed. I pulled my umbrella from the truck, big enough for three. "Here," I said, opening it. "I'm parked close." Claire hesitated, then nodded. We huddled under the umbrella, Nina between us, as we crossed the lot. The rain drummed on the nylon loud enough to drown out everything else. Claire's arm brushed mine, and I felt it like a spark. At her car, an old Honda with a dented bumper, I helped load the groceries. Nina climbed into her car seat, already half asleep. Claire closed the trunk and turned to me. "You're too nice," she said, rain dripping from her lashes. "Just returning the favor," I replied. That mac and cheese was a lifesaver. She smiled real this time, and it hit me hard. "You're young, Liam. I'm almost 10 years older than you." I grinned. "Good thing I like older women." Her eyes widened, then she laughed, shaking her head. "You're trouble," maybe I said. "But the good kind." She got in the car, started the engine, and rolled down the window. "Thanks for the umbrella. I'll bring it back." "Keep it," I called as she pulled away. She didn't argue. That night, I found a box of homemade oatmeal cookies on my work locker at the diner. No note, just a ribbon tied around it. I knew who it was from. I ate one on my break, the taste warm and sweet like the memory of her laugh in the rain. I started noticing her schedule. She worked Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays, always the late shift. I'd find excuses to linger after my plumbing jobs, grabbing coffee at the diner just to see her. She'd nod, maybe smile, but there was a wall there, built high and careful. I didn't push. I just showed up. One evening, I fixed the leaky faucet in her apartment building. The landlord was a cheapskate, so I did it on my day off, no charge. Claire found out and left a thank you note under my windshield wiper, a simple, "You didn't have to." See, I kept it in my glove box. Little by little, the moments piled up. A shared glance across the diner. Nina waving from the park. Claire's cookies showing up when I least expected. I wasn't looking for anything, but I was starting to want something. Her, Nina, the way they made the world feel less heavy. I didn't know where it was going. But for the first time in years, I wasn't just getting by. I was waiting for the next time I'd see her. And that was enough to keep me coming back. By the end of November, the air in Ashwood had turned sharp enough to bite. The rusty spoon was decked out with plastic garlands and a lopsided Christmas tree in the corner, its lights blinking half-heartedly. I was wiping down the counter after the lunch rush when Claire tapped my shoulder. She was in her usual black sweater apron, tied tight, but her eyes were softer than I'd seen them. "Nina's asleep at my place," she said, voice low. "I made spaghetti. If you're not busy..." I glanced at the clock, 3:47 p.m. My plumbing gig was done for the day, and Ava was at a study group. "I could eat," I said, trying to sound casual. Her apartment was a 10-minute walk up the creaky stairs of Pine Ridge. The door stuck when she turned the key. I made a mental note to fix the hinges. Inside, the place smelled like garlic and tomato sauce. The kitchen was tiny, a single bulb swinging overhead, but it was warm. Nina was curled on the couch under a quilt, her bear tucked under her chin. Claire stirred the pot steam curling around her face. "Sit," she said, nodding at the fold-out table. 2 mismatched plates, a candle stub, and a jar. I sat, feeling too big for the chair. We ate in near silence, at first the clink of forks loud in the small space. Nina stirred, once mumbled something, then settled. Claire watched her, then turned to me. "I don't do this," she said suddenly. "Invite people over. I don't trust easily. I'm not people I said. I'm the guy who fixes your washer." She smiled small and real. "You're more than that. The spaghetti was good, simple, hearty, the kind of meal that filled you up and made you feel at home." When we finished, Claire poured us both a glass of cheap red wine from a box in the fridge. We moved to the couch, Nina between us like a tiny barrier. Claire stared into her glass. "I was married once. 6 years. Thought it was forever." Her voice was steady, but her fingers tightened around the stem. "He wanted kids, then he didn't. Said I was too serious, too old. Left when I got pregnant with Nina. Haven't seen him since." I didn't know what to say. I'd guessed pieces Nina's last name different on the daycare forms. The way Claire never mentioned family, but hearing it laid bare was different. "I'm sorry," I said. "Don't be." She took a sip. "I'm not. Nina's the best thing that ever happened to me. But some days..." She trailed off, eyes on her daughter. "Some days I feel like I'm failing her. Like I'm not enough." I set my glass down. "You're enough for her. You're enough for you. And for Nina." She looked at me, then really looked, and I saw the weight she carried. Not just the bills or the late shifts, but the fear that she'd always be alone. That she didn't deserve more. "You don't know me," she whispered. "I know you work doubles to buy Nina new shoes. I know you sing her to sleep when she has nightmares. I know you leave cookies for the guy who fixes your faucet." I leaned forward, elbows on my knees. "I know enough." Claire's eyes filled, but she didn't cry. She just nodded once, like she was letting the words sink in. We sat there until the candle burned low, Nina's breathing steady between us. When I left, Claire walked me to the door. Her hand brushed mine as she handed me my jacket. "Thank you," she said, "for listening." Anytime I replied. The next few days, everything felt different. Claire smiled more at work. She'd save me the last piece of pie, slip it onto my tray with a wink. I'd find excuses to walk her to her car after closing, carrying Nina when she fell asleep on Claire's shoulder. Once I fixed the loose knob on her bedroom door while Nina helped with a plastic screwdriver. Claire watched from the hallway, arms crossed, but her eyes were warm. Then suddenly she pulled back. It started small. She'd look away when I caught her eye. She stopped saving me pie. One night I waited by her car, but she waved me off, saying she had to get home. The next shift she'd switched to mornings. I texted her simple stuff like, "Hope Nina's feeling better," but the reply stopped. I saw her at the 7-Eleven once grabbing milk. I called her name. She turned startled, then mumbled something about being late. Nina waved, but Claire hurried her out. That night I found a voicemail. Claire's voice, tired and clipped. "Liam, I know you're good. You're too good. But I can't do this. I don't have anything left to give anyone. I don't want you to see the worst parts of me. Please, just let it go." I played it 3 times, lying on the couch in the dark. Ava was at a friend's, the house too quiet. I wanted to call back to tell her she was wrong, that I'd seen the worst and still wanted to stay. But I didn't. I'd never pushed, and I wasn't going to start now. The days dragged. I fixed pipes, served coffee, came home to Ava's chatter about college essays. I smiled when I had to, but it felt hollow. I missed Nina's laugh. I missed Claire's voice, low and careful, like she was always weighing her words. I missed the way she looked at me when she thought I wasn't watching. I told myself to move on. She'd made it clear, but every time I passed Pine Ridge, I slowed down, half hoping to see her light on. Every time Nina's name came up at the diner, some coworker mentioning daycare pickup, I felt it like a punch. I wasn't in love. Not yet. but I was close enough to know what it felt like to lose something before it even started. One night I sat on the porch with a beer, the cold seeping through my jacket. Dad's old rocking chair creaked beside me. He used to say, "Son, don't chase what runs, but don't walk away from what's worth fighting for." I didn't know which this was. All I knew was that Claire's voicemail played in my head, and I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd let her down by doing nothing. I decided to give her space. Real space. No more lingering looks, no more saved pie. If she wanted me gone, I'd go, but I couldn't stop the ache when I saw Nina's empty swing at the parks, or the way my hands remembered the weight of her when I carried her to the car. I wasn't sure what came next. But I knew one thing: Claire wasn't just a coworker or a neighbor. She was the first person in years who made me want to be more than the guy who fixed things. And letting her go, even if it was what she wanted, felt like the hardest repair I'd ever attempted. The rain started around midnight, hard and relentless, drumming on the tin roof of my house like it was trying to get in. I was half asleep on the couch, some late-night rerun flickering on the TV when my phone buzzed on the coffee table. Unknown number, but I knew the area code. I answered on the second ring. Liam Claire's voice cracked through the static, thin and panicked. "It's Nina. She's burning up. I don't know what to do." I was already pulling on my boots. "I'm coming. Keep her cool wet cloth on her forehead. I'll be there in 10. I grabbed my keys, a bottle of children's fever reducer from the medicine cabinet, and was out the door before the call ended. The streets were slick headlights cutting through sheets of rain. Pine Ridge was a blur of sodium lights and puddles. I took the stairs 2 at a time, boots splashing. Claire opened the door before I knocked. Her face was pale eyes, red hair plastered to her cheeks. She wore an old t-shirt and sweatpants barefoot. Nina was on the couch wrapped in a damp towel, whimpering. She woke up screaming, Claire said, voice shaking. I gave her the last of the Tylenol, but it's not helping. I knelt beside Nina, brushing sweaty curls from her forehead. Her skin was furnace hot. "Hey, kiddo," I murmured. "It's okay, I'm here." Nina's eyes fluttered open. "Liam," she croaked, then coughed a wet rattling sound. Claire hovered, wringing her hands. "The clinic's closed. Urgent care's 40 minutes away and my car won't start in this." I finished for her. I'd seen her Honda struggling last week. "We'll manage here. Get me a bowl of cool water and a washcloth." Claire disappeared into the kitchen. I eased Nina into a sitting position, propping pillows behind her. Her breathing was shallow but steady. Claire returned with the bowl, hands trembling so badly water sloshed over the edge. "Sit," I told her, taking the bowl. "Breathe." She sank into the armchair, knees pulled to her chest. I soaked the cloth, folded it, and laid it across Nina's forehead. The little girl sighed, leaning into the coolness. I checked the thermometer Claire handed me, 102.8, high but not emergency. "She needs fluids," I said. "And more medicine, in an hour. You got Pedialyte?" Claire shook her head. "I ran out yesterday." I pulled the bottle from my jacket pocket, brought some, and a spare thermometer. I'd grabbed it on instinct, the same way I always carried spare washers in my truck. Claire stared at the bottle like it was gold. "You just have this plumber's kit," I said, unscrewing the cap, "and big sister emergencies. Ava went through this at Nina's age." I coaxed Nina to sip the Pedialyte, slow and steady. Claire watched silent. When Nina drifted off again, I moved to the kitchen, heating milk on the stove warm, not hot, with a teaspoon of honey. Claire followed, leaning against the counter. "I can't afford the ER copay," she whispered. "Not this month. You don't need it tonight." I stirred the milk. "She's stable. We'll keep her cool, alternate meds, call the doctor in the morning." Claire's shoulders sagged. "I'm a terrible mother." I turned off the burner. "You're scared? That's different." She laughed, a broken sound. "I called you at 2 a.m., like you're family." I poured the milk into a sippy cup. "Maybe I want to be." The words hung there. Claire's eyes widened, then filled. She looked away, wiping her face with her sleeve. Nina stirred, coughing again. I carried the milk to the couch, sat beside her. Claire knelt on the floor, stroking Nina's hair. We took turns, cloth milk thermometer. The rain eased to a steady patter. At 3:30, Nina's fever dropped to 1.2. She was sleeping deeply, chest rising and falling. Claire exhaled a sound halfway between a sob and relief. She sank back on her heels, head in her hands. I thought I'd lose her, she said, voice muffled. You didn't. I reached out, hesitated, then rested my hand on her shoulder. She's tough. Like her mom. Claire lifted her head. Tears tracked down her cheeks, but she didn't brush them away. Why are you here, Liam? Really? I looked at Nina, then at Claire. Because I see you carrying everything alone, and I don't want you to anymore. She stared at me, lips trembling. I'm a mess. I'm broke. I'm enough, I said gently. You're enough. Claire broke then. Not loud, not dramatic, just a quiet unraveling. She leaned forward, forehead against my knee, shoulders shaking. I slid to the floor, pulling her into my arms. She clung to me, face buried in my shirt, crying like she'd been holding it in for years. I held her. No words. Just the rain. Nina's soft breathing and the weight of Claire's trust finally cracking open. When the tears slowed, she didn't pull away. She stayed there, curled against me on the rug, my back against the couch. Nina shifted, murmuring in her sleep. Claire's hand found mine, fingers lacing tight. I'm scared, she whispered into the dark. Me too, I admitted. But we're here now. We didn't kiss. Didn't need to. The moment was bigger than that. I grabbed a blanket from the couch, draped it over us. Claire's head rested on my chest, her breathing evening out. I stayed awake, listening to the storm fade, Nina's fever breaking in small, steady degrees. Sometime before dawn, Claire stirred. Stay, she mumbled, half asleep. I pressed my lips to her hair. I'm not going anywhere. The rain stopped. The apartment was quiet except for the tick of the wall clock and Nina's soft snores. I closed my eyes, Claire's warmth against me, and for the first time in years, I didn't feel like I was just fixing things. I was home. 3 months slipped by like pages in a quiet book. Winter settled over Ashwood with a hush of snow that muffled the streets and turned the Willamette into a ribbon of steel. The rusty spoon swapped its plastic garlands for paper snowflakes taped to the windows by the high school kids who bussed tables on weekends. I still fixed pipes by day and poured coffee by night, but the rhythm had changed. My truck knew the route to Pine Ridge Apartments without thinking. My keyring carried a second copy cut the week Nina's fever broke that opened Claire's door without a knock. Morning started early. I'd wake to the soft clatter of Claire moving around the kitchen, the smell of burnt toast and instant coffee drifting through the thin wall that separated her bedroom from the living room couch where I'd taken to crashing. The couch was lumpy, the springs poked my back, but I didn't complain. I'd open my eyes to Nina's bare feet padding across the linoleum, her voice piping up before I'd even sat up. Liam, can we have pancakes shaped like dinosaurs? Claire would appear in the doorway, hair twisted up with a pencil, wearing one of my old flannel shirts over her leggings. Only if you eat the tails first, she'd say, and Nina would giggle like it was the funniest rule in the world. I'd shuffle to the stove, flip the batter, and watch Claire pack Nina's lunch peanut butter sandwich, cut into triangles, a bruised apple, a sticky note that always read, "Love you to the moon." Claire never asked me to stay the night. I just did. Some evenings I'd head home to check on Ava, throw in a load of laundry, sleep in my own bed. Most nights I didn't. The toothbrush in Claire's bathroom had been there since January, wedged between Nina's sparkly unicorn paste and Claire's off-brand mint. Nobody mentioned it. Nobody needed to. We didn't call it dating. We didn't call it anything. We just lived it. Claire started baking again. Not the frantic stress baking of December, but slow, deliberate things, banana bread on Sundays, oatmeal raisin cookies tucked into my lunch cooler without a word. I'd find them when I was under someone's sink grease up to my elbows, and the sweetness would hit me like a secret. I paid her back in small repairs, new washer in the kitchen faucet, a shelf in Nina's closet so her books stopped avalanching onto the floor. The landlord still didn't care, but the apartment felt less like a temporary stop and more like a place where things stayed fixed. Nina called me Liam still, but sometimes when she was half asleep on the couch during Saturday cartoons, it came out softer. Liam, close enough to something else that neither Claire nor I corrected her. One Friday in late February, the snow melted into slush and the diner closed early because the pipes burst in the walk-in freezer. I came home, Claire's home, with a pizza box balanced on my toolbox. Nina was already in pajamas printed with tiny rockets. Claire met me at the door, flower on her cheek from whatever she'd been rolling out. Perfect timing, she said, taking the pizza. I made dessert. We ate on the living room floor because the table was covered in Nina's art project, construction paper hearts glued to popsicle sticks. Claire poured us wine in plastic cups left over from Nina's birthday. The TV played some old Disney movie on low volume. Nina fell asleep halfway through her second slice head and Claire's lap sauce on her chin. I carried her to bed, tucked the quilt around her shoulders. When I came back, Claire was stacking plates in the sink, the kitchen light casting gold on her skin. I leaned against the doorframe and watched her move quiet, efficient, beautiful in a way that had nothing to do with trying. She glanced over her shoulder. What, nothing, I said. Just, you. Claire turned off the water, dried her hands on a dish towel. You say that like it's simple. It is simple. I stepped closer. You, me, Nina, this. She looked at me for a long moment, then crossed the small space between us. Her hands found my chest, fingers curling into my shirt. I'm still scared, she whispered. I know, I'm still broke. Still a mess. Still enough, I finished. She laughed, watery and soft, and rested her forehead against mine. We stood like that, breathing the same air, the apartment quiet except for the hum of the fridge and the occasional creak of the building settling. Later, after the dishes were done and the lights were low, Claire pulled a folded piece of paper from her pocket, Nina's latest drawing. It was the three of us stick figures holding hands under a yellow sun. Nina had labeled them in wobbly crayon, Mommy, Liam, me. Claire smoothed it on the fridge with a magnet shaped like a coffee cup. She asked if you're staying forever. Claire said, not looking at me. I swallowed. What did you tell her? That forever's a big word. But tonight you're here. I wrapped my arms around her from behind, chin on her shoulder. I liked tonight. Spring crept in slowly. The snow turned to rain, the rain to tentative green. Ava got accepted to the state college 2 hours away, scholarship, thank God. She spent weekends packing, asking if I'd be okay alone. I told her I wouldn't be alone. She rolled her eyes but smiled when she met Claire and Nina for the first time. Nina showed Ava her rocket pajamas. Claire baked lemon bars. It felt like family, the kind you choose. One Saturday morning in April, I woke to the smell of coffee and the sound of Claire humming off-key. Sunlight slanted through the blinds, dust motes dancing. Nina was still asleep. I padded to the kitchen in socks, found Claire at the counter in my flannel again, pouring 2 mugs. She handed me one without turning, black, 2 sugars. I finally learned. I took the mug, set it down, and pulled her close. You didn't have to. I wanted to. She leaned back against me, warm and solid. Stay today. No plumbing, no diner. Just us. I kissed the top of her head, already planning on it. We spent the day on ordinary things, grocery run in the rain. Nina's dance party to an old pop playlist, grilled cheese for lunch because it was Nina's favorite. Claire laughed more, the sound lighter than it used to be. When Nina napped, Claire and I sat on the couch, her feet in my lap, my thumb tracing the arch absent-mindedly. I used to think love had to be loud, she said quietly. Fireworks, grand promises. But this... She gestured at the cluttered coffee table, the half-finished puzzle, the quiet. This is better. I nodded. It's real. She turned to face me, knees pulled up. I don't know what happens next. Nina starts kindergarten in the fall, rent's going up, I'm still me, and I'm still the guy who fixes things, I said. We'll figure it out. One leak at a time. Claire smiled, the kind that reached her eyes. Stay tonight, already planning on it, I repeated. That evening, after Nina was asleep and the apartment was dark except for the glow of the streetlight through the blinds, Claire curled against me on the couch. Her head on my chest, my fingers in her hair. I'm not afraid anymore, she murmured. But I'm not rushing either, just stay. I pressed my lips to her forehead. I'm not going anywhere. Outside, the first crocuses pushed through the mud along the walkway. Inside, the 3 of us breathed the same quiet air. We weren't a fairy tale. We didn't have rings or 5-year plans. But we had mornings with dinosaur pancakes, evenings with construction paper hearts, and the steady certainty that tomorrow would look a lot like today, and that was more than enough. I didn't know what the future held. Maybe Ava would move out. Maybe Claire's car would finally die. Maybe Nina would outgrow rocket pajamas. But if love was walking through the ordinary days together, fixing faucets, burning toast, holding each other when the rain came, then I think we'd been in love for a long time. And for the first time in years, I wasn't just fixing things. I was building something, something real, something ours.